Welcome to a special edition of the Angus Report. I'm Clint Mefford. Last week we shared the first part of our documentary, Raising the Stakes, which features a consumer couple's tour of the beef industry. On day one, certified Angus beef production brand manager Kara Lee took Josh and Leah Swindler to both a seed stock and commercial cow-calf operation. And when we left off last week, Josh and Leah just met with Shane Tiffany of Tiffany Cattle Company. Feed yards are an integral part of the beef production chain, and Shane set out to show Josh and Leah why. Here's the rest of Josh and Leah's journey.
So, tire mats for the cattle, so when they're leaving the chute, you don't want them burning their feet, peeling out on the concrete and stuff, so the rubber is there. This is called a silencer chute. It's because it's quieter. And so if done correctly, if the guys do everything right, those cattle will naturally flow without much pressure from us. And then they'll receive their shots and then be moved right on.
You have guys on horses back here kind of
most of the time it's a guy on foot like my son.
Oh yeah.
That's where you know you'll have your higher skill guys at delivering the shots, but it's pretty quiet. And so it's just quiet. See, those are those.
If you or I go to the same doctor with an ailment and we need an antibiotic, there's a good chance that if we have the same thing, we're going to get the same prescription as far as milligrams and whatnot. If a calf comes through here, they're going to look at the weight on that animal and give a dosage of antibiotic that is very specific to that weight. And that really helps target their ailment and the efficacy of that antibiotic for use.
Like Colton was out here just probably last week, wasn't it, Colton?
Yeah, Thursday.
We did 1,000 head in that day.
Through the chute? Or?
Through the chute. Wow. So it was a big day. But we had a lot of processing to do. Yeah. And so on those days, the cowboys will say, "Can you bring your boys? We need some help." And so, anyway, yeah, that's where Sean and I started too. We started processing in the processing barn and washing waters, and but Colton's also going to spend time in a feed truck and on the nutrition side, and he's going to learn how to weld and run a cutting torch and turn the wrench and all of those things. Let's keep going. So this is modified distillers. It would be a byproduct of the ethanol industry. So you can smell it. This is like cattle cheesecake.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, this is about 110% the nutrient value of corn.
So does each cow get fed once a day or?
Twice a day.
Twice a day?
Yeah, sometimes a year we'll go up to 3 feedings a day, but generally it's 2.
Those be on colder? A
morning feeding and an evening feeding. Actually, yeah, during the colder months we'll go. And actually during the summer, hot summer months, we won't feed 50 and 50. We'll feed more like 40 in the morning and 60% in the afternoon. Cattle are creatures of habit. And so, like, see that Charolais calf eating right there? Chances are you could come back tomorrow and he'd be right there. Like that's his dinner table spot. And so that's why consistency along the whole length of the bunk is so crucial, because if that bunk is empty, he won't get as much to eat. If it's over full, he'll get too much to eat. And so consistency, our guys are trained to feed as evenly and as accurately as they can, every pen, every day.
And so your nutritionist
Yep.
works up, so do they say, all right, for the day's ration, the cow's going to get, for example, 2 pounds of silage, 3 pounds of brewers, or whatever mixed together? Is that how that works?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So just like Kara was talking about.
The setup was really interesting, how they had large bulk piles of silage and corn and all of the different components that go into this very precisely measured ration that the cattle are fed. There was definitely a lot more finesse and attention to detail given in this part of the cattle operation than I had ever anticipated.
That grain is then elevated up top and then shot in the different bins. So the corn comes through here and there's a series of roller mills in there and it crushes the corn. They would come here, and at their truck level, the computer's there, and they can see what ration they're on, and it would begin the process of everything they need. Their corn and their liquid would come out of there. That's the main computer, and you can see all the different rations. And so on a daily basis in this oven, we're drying everything down. So you weigh it wet, then you weigh it dry, and you find out if all of the feed analysis is where we want it to be based off the commodities so that the ration's fine-tuned. This would be the micro machine. So if you come over here, scales and metering systems. So 4 on this side, 4 on that side. And so it meters it out on a parts per million basis on weight so that you can get in, and then you buy everything in bulk. And the plane of nutrition that these cattle are on is just incredibly high compared to even the human side of things.
Is that an antibiotic?
This is an antibiotic, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Aureomycin is CTC, chlorotetracycline, aureomycin. If we have a whole pen that's fighting some low-level subclinical stuff, or that we're worried about, if they got foot rot or if they've got some low-level respiratory issues, but rather than having to pull them and doctor them all, we will do a pulse feeding of the antibiotic in the feed.
Gotcha. So you
On
don't.
a controlled level.
Okay, so you don't everyone doesn't get antibiotics in their feed.
No, only on a case-by-case basis as needed.
I was really impressed with knowing that the men actually physically get into the pen with the cattle every day to check them over for illness, and they treat them appropriately.
We not only do the feedlot side, but we also have a sizable farming operation. And so to be able to show Josh and Leah some of the unique things that we do when it comes to cover crops and the utilization of some growing crops, and to try and have crops growing on our ground year-round rather than leaving things set fallow.
I have to ask, what is the tire for?
Oh, well, so this was stuff that we grazed.
Oh, okay.
And so they've got free choice mineral
Yeah.
when they're out here grazing. There's free choice mineral in it. And so this is triticale, rye, some tillage radishes, some kale. We'll be able to find some kale in there. You can make a salad. Mm-hmm. And I think there's also some cowpeas in there.
Nice, and it's all just mixed.
And it's all just mixed.
Cool.
See, look at that. That's some kale.
Nice.
Big, gigantic kale. Isn't that crazy? And so there's stuff in everywhere. Here's some more kale. And then there's a radish, a tillage radish.
Yeah.
And you see how it's growing deep and breaking up some stuff. Yep. And so there's a little bit of everything.
So, you mentioned your initial plan was to chemically spray the ground to kill this. Mm-hmm. Are you going to still need to do that afterwards?
No. What we'll do is it will try and come back, but probably not by the time the corn canopies. Yeah. So we'll still plant corn. Dad will be here. He's our silage chopper, and he will chop this field, and then we'll plant corn right into it. So just an incredible crop. And the other thing is those 90 head of heifers gained 2.5 pounds a day for 60 days on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good stuff.
And look, it's taller than you, Josie. Where'd you go?
Man, so peaceful out here.
Yeah, it is nice, isn't it? We are literally out in the middle of nowhere, so it's good. We get good sunsets here.
Oh, yeah.
To get to know Josh and Leah on a more personal level, and what makes them tick and what they're passionate about, and you know, what their professions are and what their dreams are. Just an overall incredible day, really rewarding for sure. What a great young couple, and I think the future is bright for them. I'm excited to see what they do with their lives. They've got great potential, so it's been fun.
I honestly had such a great time there. The Tiffany's were wonderful people, and I grilled Shane without any sense of shame or concern about making him uncomfortable. And he addressed everyone with love and compassion, and really conveyed to me that there was a genuine sense of concern and regard for the well-being of the animals that they were caring for.
It was lovely meeting. It was lovely meeting you too.
Nice to meet you.
It was good meeting you guys too.
Morgan,
Nice to meet you.
take care of your dad.
We started day 3 of our journey by having a pretty long drive back to Kansas City, Missouri. Then we sat down with Kara at a park overlooking the West Bottoms, where our stockyards and packing houses used to be, to talk more about packing houses and the slaughtering process. Looking at the packing house, my concerns were for the welfare of the animals in the moment of their death. If we are taking a life in order that we can nourish other lives, we should do that with the utmost care, concern, and respect for that animal and for that sacrifice.
So I've been through, honestly, I don't know how many times I've been through plants, probably more than I could remember.
I grew up on a small registered and commercial cow-calf operation in southern Indiana. My family grew up with a very rural lifestyle. I was in a family of 3 girls, and I was fortunate to have a father who he didn't really believe in a man's work or a woman's work. There was just work, and it all had to be done. I think human nature is to be skeptical of the things that we're not very familiar with. So it's a part of my job that I'm very passionate about, to help bridge those gaps.
But I never cease to be amazed. And honestly, you can kind of stand in awe on the fabrication line of the sheer productivity that goes on in those plants, under the cleanliness. The sanitary conditions are absurd, and the skill of the workers in those plants is just phenomenal. They've got that thing down to a science, and they're so passionate about producing a wholesome product and meeting all of their audit points from an animal handling standpoint down to the safety and wholesomeness standpoint. It's just pretty incredible. What we've got to share with y'all today is actually a video from Dr. Temple Grandin from Colorado State University.
Cattle are offloaded as calmly as possible to minimize excitement and prevent slips and falls. It's important to fill the pens properly and have some room for the cattle to move. It's usually recommended to fill the pens about 75% full. After the animals have rested in the pens, they're brought up in small groups into the plant. And good animal handling requires more walking. You've got to walk more times back and forth between the yards and the chute system in order to move those small groups. But it's really important. In the meat industry, there's an increasing concern about how animals are handled. The chute system in the plant is high solid size because...
So let's pause right there as we're talking about just the whole process of getting the cattle off the truck into the plants. It's important to let those cattle have a chance to calm down. And what you guys saw on the screen there, the gentleman that was moving cattle around, that would actually be a point in the plant that's going to be under live video surveillance at all times, to the harvest floor, to the unloading area, anywhere that the cattle aren't considered beef yet, where you have live animals, because they're under a constant audit to make sure that there's not any kind of mishandling. So this is what you see here. This is where the cattle are walking down, and this is towards the stunning area. This is a big conveyor belt that the cattle will actually walk onto. What it does is it carries those animals by their brisket and their stomach, so they are essentially straddling it, and it gives the cattle a feeling of weightlessness. So the captive bolt gun, essentially it renders that animal brain dead. The heart is still pumping. You want the heart to still be pumping to flush the blood out of the system as quickly as possible. But at the point of stunning, the animal feels nothing. There's still a lot of nerves firing in the body. There's actually a USDA inspector that would stand at this point in the line, and what they're looking for when the animal comes off of the stun line is any kind of ocular movement. Ocular movement is one of the first signs of whether or not that animal has any sense of feeling still. So what the cattle are getting ready to go through now is actually a bath, because animals come from a feed yard. We want to remove any opportunity for feces to cross-contaminate that carcass once we pull the hide off. For the next step in the chain from the packing plant, that beef is going to be sold typically one of 2 places, either a retail distributor or a food service distributor. But one of those 2 distribution chains will then service the two places that the consumers typically have an endpoint. And that's either the restaurant side or the grocery store side. Depending on how far down the line the plant's going to go, they're going to take that. We basically take big pieces and make them into little pieces. Then everything is going to be utilized. Some of your large-scale packers will run anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 head of cattle through in a day's time. It's pretty incredible what they can run through.
My big takeaways were that there's way more detail and research and thought that goes into that than I could have ever imagined.
Every step is designed to produce calmness and to make those last few hours of their lives as good as possible.
Even though it was hard for me to watch that video, it was kind of reassuring at the same time because the animals seemed very, very calm and like they didn't feel a thing, and that's exactly what I would want to happen if they were my animals.
From Kansas City, we went to St. Joseph, to the local Price Chopper supermarket, which is a place where my husband and I grocery shop pretty routinely. We went to meet with the butcher.
Hi, Carl. I'd like to introduce you to Josh and Leah.
Josh and Leah. Nice to meet you. Hello, I'm Carl Taylor. I've been with Constantino's, the meat cutter, for 5 years. I have over 30 years in meat cutting. I started out in a grocery store carrying out groceries, and it just seemed like the guys that worked in the meat shop, I don't know, that's where I wanted to be. So I couldn't be in there because I wasn't old enough. So I just stayed there till I was, I guess. To me, it's important to always do a good job, put out a good product, and to me, it's easy. It's not work. I just show up. I love it, yes. Today we had a young couple from St. Joe taking the tour of the meat department. There's no quick and easy ways to anything. There's a certain procedure that we have to follow and do with regulations, health department.
How long does a product last once it's out here on display?
Usually a day and a half.
So you have a pretty good turnover in here.
I took them and give them a tour of our coolers where we keep the product, and showed them our cutting rooms and our storage area. They were, I think, surprised to see the volume. It seems like a lot, but it doesn't last very long because you're turning that over daily. I think the most important thing that I would like people to know, and that we are here to serve them. I hope that they feel like that they can ask us. We'll come out and we will answer your questions and or help you in any way we can. That was really enjoyable. I know that they left with a better understanding of how it's done. And nothing's better than when someone picks up your meat and comes back and tells you, what a great steak they had. And that's what it's about for me.
When we were at the meat counter at Price Chopper buying steaks, I had fresh in my mind the entire production process of the ranches and the cow-calf operation to the feedlot to slaughter, and finally this product ending up ready for consumers. As we purchased that steak, I was just awed by how complex that entire process is. We went back to the place where we started at and parted ways with Kara. She was a wonderful guide, and I look forward to continuing to get to know her.
At the end of the day, meeting good people, spending time with good people, and having fun, human connections, and we had a blast. We learned a lot. We shared a lot of concerns on both ends. That's what it's all about.
You guys take care.
Very tired. It was a little brutal. Covered a lot of ground, a lot of information, all packed into 3 days. Okay, it is Monday afternoon. We have concluded our journey and we are back here at the Swindler household getting ready to cook some beef for dinner. Animal welfare was definitely my biggest concern beginning this trip. Just, I've heard the horror stories or been exposed to the thinking on the other side of the fence of commercial agriculture being really harmful to animals, etc. And my thinking on that has definitely changed because I've seen the level of care that goes into feeding and caring for these animals and making sure, they're not over-medicated and they're not overly stressed. If we're going to consume an animal, that is the type of care that we should be putting into that.
None of them hid any part of their ranch from us. And that was really impressive to see that kind of openness and just willingness to engage in conversation. I think that's really important moving forward, not just on the rancher's side, but on the consumer side, to be able to understand what really goes on.
Knowing that the bad examples that I've seen maybe in the media or online are definitely not the norm, and that the industry is highly regulated and is filled with compassionate, wonderful people that genuinely care about the animals and about the product they're giving to consumers. We're all in this together. We have more similarities than differences. It can be easy to take one side of the fence over another, and we really need to take a step back from that and just sit down at the table together and evaluate the industry and see the process from start to finish and what thought and training and research has gone into it. I wish that everyone who has ever felt uneasy about the beef industry or about agriculture or eating meat could go on one of these trips, and not to change their minds or convert them or whatever, but just to expose them to a broader perspective and talk to these people that really do care so much about the animals and the environment.
I feel completely confident that when I go buy a steak in a store, that it was cared for every bit as much as the cow that grew up on my uncle's farm or the chicken that I raised myself.
I want to put my money towards something that I believe in, and I really feel comfortable with this industry.